Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're tackling a pretty wild question today. Can nature itself be psychedelic?
Yeah, can just being out in the wilderness, like in the mountains or by the ocean, actually trigger, like altered states of consciousness?
So no substances needed,
Yeah.
right? Just the raw power of nature.
Exactly. And, we're not just talking about feeling like relaxed or peaceful in nature.
Right.
We're going to explore if the wilderness can actually shift how we see and experience the world, you know?
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty mind-blowing concept. But where do we even begin to unpack something like that?
Well, a good place to start might be with something we can all relate to, feeling happier outdoors.
Okay, yeah.
There's this study called Mappiness, where researchers used a smartphone app to track how happy people felt in different places.
Interesting. So, were they happier at the park or at the mall?
Exactly. And the results were pretty clear. People were way happier in green spaces compared to urban settings.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I always feel more at ease when I'm out in nature.
Right. But what's fascinating is that this Mappiness study considered things like vacations, so it wasn't just about taking a break from the city.
Well, so it really suggests there's something deeper about how nature impacts us.
Yeah, there's something more fundamental going on here.
So it's not just a mood boost, it's something deeper. Does this connect to why some people find nature almost spiritual?
It very well could. And it's interesting you mentioned the spiritual side because there are cultures like the Finnish who have this incredibly strong connection with nature. It's almost a part of who they are.
Oh, right. It's like that Finnish word, mesanpeito.
Exactly.
It's about feeling completely lost in the beauty and vastness of nature. It sounds so mystical.
It's often described as a spiritual experience, like a sense of oneness with everything. And this connection to nature isn't just some cultural quirk either. It's protected by law in Finland. They have jokaimienoikeus, which means every man's right.
Every man's right?
Yeah, it gives everyone the right to roam freely in nature no matter who owns the land.
Wow, that's incredible. I can see how being able to freely wander in nature would cultivate a deeper connection and maybe even lead to those feelings of mesanpeito. It makes you wonder if our more restricted access to nature here impacts our ability to have those kinds of experiences. But before we go too far down that road, let's get back to the science for a bit. Are there theories that attempt to explain why we're so drawn to nature?
There are actually two main theories. The first is the biophilia hypothesis, which basically says humans have this innate biological connection to nature because, we evolved in it.
So millions of years of living in nature have hardwired us to seek it out.
Exactly. It's like it's in our DNA. And there's some fascinating research from Japan that supports this idea. They have these things called forest therapy stations.
Wait, so people are going to the forest for therapy?
Yeah. These are forests specifically used for therapeutic purposes.
I'm picturing therapists leading group sessions among the trees. But seriously, how does that work?
Well, the idea is that simply being in the forest, taking in all the sights and sounds, can reduce stress and improve mental health.
Wow, so it's like nature's the medicine.
Exactly. They're basically prescribing nature. And studies show that spending time in these forest therapy stations can lower blood pressure, reduce stress hormones, and even boost your immune system.
That's amazing. It seems like our bodies recognize that they need nature to function correctly. You mentioned there was a second theory as well.
Right. The second one is the attention restoration theory. It focuses more on the cognitive benefits of nature.
Okay, cognitive benefits. So is this about how nature can make us smarter or something?
It's more about how nature can help us focus and restore our attention spans, which get really exhausted in our modern world with all the digital distractions.
Oh, tell me about it. I feel like I can't focus on anything anymore without my phone buzzing or getting a new email.
Exactly. It's like we're constantly bombarded with information and stimuli, and it tires out our brains. But nature offers what's called soft fascination.
Soft fascination.
It means that nature engages our attention in a gentle, undemanding way.
I like the sound of that.
It gives our brains a chance to rest and recover, unlike the constant jarring stimulation of technology.
So it's not just about being physically in nature, but about giving our brains a break from all the digital noise.
You got it. And there's research to back this up. Neuroscientists in Utah are finding that even short exposures to nature, like a walk in a park, can significantly boost cognitive function. It can improve focus, problem solving, even creativity.
That's fascinating. We've covered a lot of ground here talking about happiness and attention restoration, but we still haven't really touched on the psychedelic aspect of nature.
Right.
How do all these theories connect to the idea that nature can induce altered states of consciousness?
That's a great question, and it leads us to one of the most fascinating parts of all of this, the sensory experience of nature. Think about all the sensory input you encounter when you're out in the wilderness. The smells, the sounds, the textures.
Yeah, it's a full-body immersion.
Exactly, and that can have a profound impact on how we perceive things.
Okay, I'm starting to see where you're going with this. Our senses are heightened in nature, and that could lead to shifts in our perception.
Exactly. Let's start with smell. Have you ever noticed how calming the smell of a forest can be?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially that earthy smell after the rain. It's instantly relaxing.
Well, there's a scientific reason for that. Trees release compounds like phytoncides that have been shown to reduce stress in humans.
Wow, so the forest is literally giving off calming chemicals.
Huh.
Amazing. What about the sounds of nature? I find them so soothing as well.
Sound is another powerful part of nature. Think about bird song. It's random and non-repeating, which creates a calming effect on the brain.
It's like nature's white noise. It's funny you mention that because studies have shown that even listening to recorded birdsong can improve mood and alertness. So there's definitely something to those natural sounds. What about visually? How does the way nature looks play into all of this?
Well, have you ever noticed the repeating patterns in nature? Things like the branches of a tree, the veins in a leaf, those are called fractals.
Yeah, I have. They're very visually appealing. Do those patterns impact us on a deeper level?
Research suggests that even brief exposure to fractal patterns, like those found in nature and even abstract art, can induce feelings of calm and mental restoration. It's like our brains are wired to respond positively to them.
So nature is designed to calm and restore our minds, even visually. Okay, so we've got these calming smells, soothing sounds, and visually engaging patterns. They all work together to create this sense of peace and well-being. Are we getting closer to the idea of nature as a psychedelic?
We're getting there. By immersing ourselves in this sensory-rich environment, we're giving our brains a break from the overstimulation of modern life. And in that state, something interesting can happen.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What happens in that state?
Well, that's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive. We'll go even deeper into these sensory experiences and see how they might lead to altered states of consciousness that resemble psychedelic experiences, all without any substances involved.
I can't wait to dive in. This is already blowing my mind.
Welcome back. Before we go any further, I think it's important to mention something we haven't really addressed directly yet. The absence of technology in nature.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
We talked about how all the tech we're surrounded by can really overload our brains and make it tough to focus. But how does that play into this whole altered states of consciousness thing?
Okay, so picture this. You're hiking deep in the woods. You're surrounded by trees, you can hear the birds singing, you can smell the earth, and most importantly, your phone is tucked away, there's no internet for miles. In that state of digital disconnection, your brain finally has a chance to relax and really shift gears. It's not getting bombarded with notifications and emails anymore, and it can just focus on being present in nature.
I see what you're saying. Whenever I'm out in nature, I definitely feel more in tune with my surroundings. It's like all the mental chatter quiets down and I can actually just be. But how does that create a psychedelic experience?
Well, think about it this way. Psychedelics are known to shake up our normal ways of thinking and perceiving. They help us see the world in new ways. And when we disconnect from technology, something similar can happen.
Okay, I'm listening.
Our brains become more sensitive to the subtle things in nature. We start to notice things we might have missed before.
Like what kinds of things?
The intricate patterns of a spider web, the way a butterfly moves, the sunlight filtering through the leaves. It's like our senses become more acute when we're not distracted.
So we're able to appreciate the beauty and complexity of nature on a much deeper level.
Exactly. And that heightened awareness can lead to those aha moments, those sudden shifts in perspective that people often associate with psychedelics.
Okay, so by ditching the tech and immersing ourselves in the sensory richness of nature, we're creating the right conditions for our brains to enter those altered states of consciousness. Is that what you're saying?
Precisely. And it's not just about removing those distractions, it's also about the quality of the sensory input we're getting. Nature provides this incredible sensory symphony. It's both calming and stimulating at the same time.
A sensory symphony, I like that. We've talked about smells and sounds, but what about the other senses?
Well, touch, for instance. Have you ever walked barefoot on grass? Or felt the coolness of moss on your skin?
Oh yeah, of course.
Those tactile experiences can be really grounding. They connect us to nature in a very physical way. And then there's taste. Have you ever picked wild berries or had a drink from a natural spring?
I have. There's definitely something special about those experiences.
It engages our sense of taste in a primal and satisfying way. All of our senses working together create this immersive, multidimensional experience. And being disconnected from technology allows us to savor each sensation.
That makes a lot of sense. So this multi-sensory immersion can lead to those feelings of awe and wonder that we often associate with psychedelic experiences.
Exactly. Think about standing on a mountaintop, looking out at a vast wilderness, or watching a sunset over the ocean. These are experiences that can evoke a sense of the sublime. It's like being connected to something much larger than yourself.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that before in nature. It's like time slows down and you become completely absorbed in the moment. I never really thought of it as being connected to psychedelics before.
It's a powerful connection. There's research that suggests awe can actually alter our perception of time, making it feel like it's slowing down or even stopping.
That's interesting. I guess when you're truly captivated by something, it's easy to lose track of time.
Right. And that feeling of timelessness is also a hallmark of the psychedelic experience.
This reminds me of something I read about a study where they showed people pictures of nature.
Oh yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Some pictures had winding, mysterious trails, and others had straight, predictable paths. And even though people only saw the pictures for a few seconds, they remembered the mysterious scenes better. It's like those scenes, with their sense of the unknown, had a stronger impact on their minds.
Exactly.
So even just looking at pictures of nature can affect our brains. But it sounds like the real magic happens when we're actually out in the wild experiencing that mystery firsthand.
Absolutely. There's something about being in a wild, untamed environment that awakens a sense of adventure and possibility. The thrill of not knowing what's around the bend, that element of surprise, it keeps our minds engaged.
You know, I think that's one of my favorite things about hiking. You never know what you're going to find. A stunning view, a rare bird, even just a perfectly formed spiderweb. It's those moments of unexpected beauty that make it so special.
I agree. And those moments can be really powerful. It's like these little epiphanies. It shows how important it is to be open and receptive when we're in nature. We have to let go of expectations and just allow ourselves to be surprised.
So it's about surrendering to the unknown, embracing the mystery. That sounds a lot like what's emphasized in psychedelic experiences too.
That's a great observation. It seems like there are a lot of parallels between the psychedelic mindset and the mindset we need to fully experience the power of nature.
Like nature is inviting us to step outside of our normal ways of seeing the world.
To embrace a more expansive, more interconnected way of being.
And in that embrace, in that surrender to the wilderness, we might discover something amazing about ourselves and our place in the universe.
Exactly.
I'm really captivated by this idea now. Can we talk about some real-world examples of how nature has impacted people's lives in these profound ways?
Absolutely. There are some really incredible stories about how nature has helped people overcome huge challenges and experience deep healing.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was hoping we'd get into. Welcome back to the show. We've been on this incredible journey, exploring how nature can be like a psychedelic, inducing these altered states of consciousness without any substances.
It's been a fascinating conversation for sure. We've delved into the science behind our connection to nature, those incredible sensory experiences, and how disconnecting from technology can really open us up to the magic of the wilderness.
I'm totally with you. But before we wrap things up, I'm dying to hear those real-world examples you mentioned earlier, stories about how nature has helped people heal and transform their lives.
Right, because it's one thing to talk about these concepts, but hearing about real people's experiences makes it so much more powerful.
Exactly. So what kind of stories are we talking about?
Well, there's this really amazing story about a group of women veterans with PTSD.
Oh, wow.
They went on a whitewater rafting trip in Idaho. These women had all experienced combat and trauma and were facing the immense challenges of coming back to civilian life. Many were dealing with the hidden wounds of war, you know?
I can only imagine how difficult that must have been for them. So where does the rafting trip come in?
The idea was that by being out on the river, surrounded by this raw, powerful nature, they could process their trauma and find some sense of peace. And you know what? It actually worked. Being out there on the river forced them to be present in their bodies, face their fears, and rely on each other for support. The rapids themselves, with their unpredictable challenges, kind of mirrored what they'd faced in combat, but in a safe and controlled environment.
It sounds like the river became this incredible metaphor for their journey toward healing.
Yeah.
But did they actually experience those shifts in consciousness we've been talking about?
Many of them said they felt profound changes in how they perceived things. They had this renewed sense of hope and felt more connected to themselves, each other, and the natural world. Some even describe it as a spiritual experience, even transcendent.
That's so powerful. It's like nature gave them this space to heal and reconnect in a way that traditional therapy might not have been able to do.
Are there other examples like this? Oh, there are tons. There's actually a whole growing field of research on the therapeutic benefits of nature. For example, in Iceland, horticultural therapy has been really successful in helping people with severe depression. They engage in gardening and other activities that involve working with plants. It helps patients reconnect with their bodies and emotions and with the rhythms of nature.
That's amazing. It's like they're rediscovering a part of themselves that had been lost.
Exactly. They rediscover the sense of aliveness and joy. It makes you think, have we lost touch with this healing power of nature in our modern, tech-filled world?
It's a good question. As we spend more time indoors and surrounded by technology, it's like we're losing that vital connection to the natural world. We already talked about how technology can overload our brains and distract us from being present, but it goes even deeper than that. Some experts believe that technology is actually changing how we perceive the world.
That's a fascinating idea.
It really is. How could technology be altering our perception?
Think about how much time we spend looking at screens. Our phones, computers, TVs, those screens show us this flat, two-dimensional version of reality.
Right.
They filter out all the richness and complexity of the real world and give us this, highly curated digital representation instead.
It's true. You find yourself scrolling through social media, looking at all these perfect photos and experiences, and it's easy to forget that real life is messy and unpredictable and, well, real.
Absolutely. And constantly being exposed to this digital version of the world can make it harder to appreciate the beauty of nature. It's almost like we become desensitized to the real thing.
So even when we do get out into nature, we might not fully experience it because our minds are still stuck in that digital way of processing information.
Exactly. And it raises an interesting question. Can we really experience the psychedelic power of nature if we're constantly filtering it through our technology? If we're more focused on getting that perfect picture for Instagram than on actually being present.
It's such a thought-provoking question. Maybe the biggest barrier to experiencing nature's magic isn't a lack of access, but our own mental and technological barriers.
I think you're right. To really connect with the transformative power of nature, we have to engage with it directly using all of our senses and leave the technology behind. We need to rediscover that primal connection that humans have with the natural world.
So it's about getting out there, feeling the wind, getting our hands dirty, and just allowing ourselves to be fully present in the moment. Letting nature work its magic without trying to control it.
I love that. And it brings us to a final, really thought-provoking question. What if the true psychedelic experience isn't about taking substances, but about rediscovering our own capacity for awe and wonder? That capacity is always available to us in nature.
It's a beautiful thought. It reminds us that some of the most profound journeys start by looking inward and rediscovering the magic that's already there. And nature can be the perfect guide on that journey. Thanks for joining us for this incredible deep dive into the psychedelic power of nature. We hope it inspires you to go out and experience the wonder for yourselves.